Okay, so Kari Rancourt is in the back of the room. She's married with 2 children, and she actually, I think most people pronounce it Kari, but you don't mind if people call you Kari. It goes kind of either way, so she's a wonderfully generous soul for that. She's a nurse and the living donor coordinator at Hartford Hospital, where she has helped double the number of living kidney transplants in the program since 2015. But she cheats. She's padding her own statistics. In January this year, she actually became a non-directed donor herself, just probably to prop up her program by 1. Second, she will be joined on stage with Terri. She has 3 grown children, was a non-directed donor in 2017. Most importantly, she is the quarterback for our mentorship program. So starting in 2021 with just 1 center, we now have 44 centers, less than 20 donations mentored in 2021. We're on pace to probably hit 700 donations mentored this year. Our 50 donor mentors will reach out to probably 25,000 people this year. There is nothing more important, I think, than having a strong number 2. So the very first thing that I did when Ned transferred the organization to my leadership was to beg Terri to be the vice president of the organization. She makes me hear what I don't want to hear. She makes me see what I don't want to see. And so it was the very first thing that I thought, because I could not imagine a more capable individual to lead this organization. And a lot of people in this audience probably know she's probably more capable than I am. So thank you both. I'm very much looking forward to both of your presentations in just a moment.
Morning. And to make things easy, we could say it's Terri and Kari. So instead of Terri and Kari, it'll make us easy to remember. We'll answer to either one. This is going to be interesting since the slides I'm presenting are behind me. So I will be turning around to make sure I remember which one. So as Matt said, I am a living donor. I donated at Loyola University Medical Center in Chicago in 2017. And I'm thrilled to see many of the mentors who are working toward those numbers that Matt shared earlier about moving the needle on donation. And we'll get to see some of those slides here in just a bit. So we can go ahead and get started. Oh, these are Kari's, or Kari's. Okay, I think we're gonna switch to Terri's slides. Or we could just wing it. There we go. So I can start by talking a little bit about what the Donor Connect program is. So the National Kidney Registry obviously is the brains and science behind matching and galas and the things that we got to see last night, all the things you heard they do. You also heard a lot yesterday, if you were in some of the events, about the microsite program. So the microsite program is designed to help recipients find a donor. The Donor Connect program that we'll talk about and the idea of mentoring helps donors find a recipient. So sometimes they already know who the recipient is and they don't know the best way to donate. Sometimes they just want to be a non-directed donor like Kari and I are, and they don't know the best, most efficient way to get that done. So our mentors are working with donor candidates where the microsite team works with recipient candidates. So we've heard a lot about the microsite side. So now we're going to talk about the donor side. Okay, so the Donor Connect team, you saw Lisa and I this morning, and you've seen Matt, so we manage that. We also have it's actually a little over 50 now, mentors. All of our mentors are living donors. Ned started the idea that no one speaks to someone who's interested in donating better than someone who's donated. So we have over 50 mentors from all across the country, from Washington State to Florida, from Southern California to Maine. So we have them everywhere. And all of us donate in different ways. right? So I'm non-directed. Some of our donors are directed. Some of them donated before they had children, some after. We have male donors. We have donors of color. We have a Spanish-speaking donor. So we try and cover the range so that we can talk to these people out of a voice of experience. We have mentors who run crazy things in the desert. And then we have donors who don't run. So we try and cover the gamut. So I run errands. I don't run anything else. So we try and do that. We also have all taken the ILDA coursework, right? The ILDA training module through the American Society of Transplantation. The ILDA, for those of you who are donors, you've talked to an ILDA. They're the person who's part of the transplant team who confirms you're providing informed consent, who's making sure you're not being coerced, who is kind of there as a touch point for you. We've all been through the book part of that training just to increase our knowledge of the transplant. We don't work in that role with the center, but we do have that background. Okay. Next slide. Oh, well, looky there. Look at that technology. Okay, so the Donor Connect program is an NKR product, right? So we contract with the National Kidney Registry to provide this service. The National Kidney Foundation also has a very small number of mentors. They only mentor candidates who enter through the National Kidney Foundation portal. So our number is much larger than theirs. We receive donor candidates through several means. If anyone goes to the National Kidney Registry site and says, I'm interested in being a living donor, they have the opportunity to have a mentor. If they enter through the portal of any one of 44 of the NKR's 102 transplant centers, they also have the opportunity. So many of the very large transplant centers, University of Wisconsin-Madison, University of Pennsylvania, University of Southern California, any of their candidates who register to their interest in being a donor would come to our portal. Also, back to the microsites. If a candidate has a microsite and is actively looking for a donor, anyone who comes in through one of those microsites is given the opportunity to have a donor mentor. So like Matt indicated, we will reach out to over 25,000 people this year. Now, not everyone reaches back. Not everyone wants to end up talking with a mentor, but many do. And those relationships vary across a wide range. Some people just want to hear from us once, tell me your story, why did you donate, how long before you could walk, how long before you could run. Never. But they want to know just that one unload of information, right? And then there's some mentors that I've had, I'm getting texts from the recovery room. I made it, you stay with them the whole way. So it's a very different relationship from mentor to mentee across the range. We reach out to them very quickly, like it says, within 2 business days. We're often the first contact they have. Even before the center at which they applied reaches out to them, we often talk to them. And we'll see a little bit why that's important that we're doing that so early. At any point, they can opt out of speaking to us. Sometimes we just get ghosted and they don't respond. That's fine. And sometimes they just say they'd rather talk to someone from the center, which is perfectly fine. So we're sharing our own donation experience. It's during those conversations that we might find you've got someone. I've referred people to Matt because I've had a couple of mentees who were in the military. I've referred people to one of our mentors who had a baby after she donated because they specifically have that question. So that's when we can maybe make an adjustment or at least give them the chance to talk to one other person. And we also educate what we feel is very important about maybe the best way forward. So, they only want to, I only want to donate to Kari. So, but then when I hear their options, like, what if I'm not a direct match to Kari? And then you find out, like, oh, I can be a voucher donor, or I can do a paired exchange. Yeah, I know what that is. I've seen Grey's Anatomy. So you can, you kind of get people where they are and give them these options. The center is also giving them these options, and we're not doing it in a coercive way. Our goal is to educate. So we're providing that peer support because it's great when you have trained professionals who are taking care of you, but at many centers, they're not as lucky as Hartford. They don't have a living donor on staff that can tell you what it's like. So we're basically being that peer-to-peer partner for them. We're reinforcing what the transplant team is telling them. We're explaining what paired exchange is. We're explaining what voucher donation is. We're talking about, yes, you'll be walking the day of or the day after surgery, those kinds of things, and telling them that they can do it. One of our mentors, Jen Roberts, uses the best phrase, we're there to normalize this process, because very often they're doing this out of desperation to help someone they love. And they're like, I don't know anyone who's done this, and my family thinks I'm crazy. And I'm like, well, if you're crazy, then you've got company, right? Because there are a lot of people who've donated a kidney to help either a stranger or someone they care about. So the idea of normalization is really important. We also are the eyes and ears often of things that might be going on with a transplant center. So sometimes we'll hear, I haven't heard from my transplant center, I don't know what's going on. And then we'll find out that maybe there was a staffing change, or someone was on vacation, or they did get a call and they didn't check their voicemail. So a lot of times we fill that role of kind of a go-between between the candidate and the transplant center. And to increase the conversion rate, and we've got some numbers about that. So there are a couple ways. When we first started, we thought we're going to make a big difference with the number of donations, and we do. We also make a very big difference in the process of someone registering through one of those sites I mentioned to getting to the center where they want to donate. Because we found that that's where a lot of people get frustrated, like, oh, they never called me back, they must not need me, when that wasn't the case. They didn't check their spam email, or the center is getting ready to call them, or any number of things could happen. So we kind of fill that space there. This is that space of referral divided by registration. So from the point someone enters to the point they're at the center where they want to donate, we have increased that rate by the numbers here. So it makes a big difference because, like I said, very often it's just an issue of, the dog ate your homework and I don't know where my paperwork went. And so we get that for them again. Or we reach out to a transplant center and say, we're hearing from a candidate that, Susan didn't get a call. And then Kari's like, well, maybe she did, maybe she didn't, but they run that down and get her called. So we're stepping up and helping the candidate through that process. In a big way, and I know the numbers below this are really small, but just look at the difference between the green and the red. That's what we're really looking at here. We almost triple the effectiveness of moving someone from registration to donation. We have tripled the impact that was being made previously. So having a mentor changes the outcomes of getting someone to donation, and we've done that by tripling that rate. So we're very excited about that. We know there's a lot of room for growth, and a lot of people come in, and don't finish because they can't or don't want to, but it's never because someone's not caring about them if they've entered the mentor program. And that's my part, so I'll turn it over to Kari.
Well, thank you for that. So I'm here to kind of give the clinical side of what it's like to partner with this fabulous organization and the benefit of an effective mentorship program. So, everyone here is either already a mentor or learning a little bit more about how to effectively become one. And so it's really nice to have everybody working together because it truly does take a village to get just one individual to donation. So the things I'm going to talk about today, a little bit of what my life is like in my day-to-day job, the intake evaluation, the lovely rules and regulations we have to follow. If anyone's wondering why the transplant centers make donors go through all these different steps, it's usually because it's UNOS's fault and not mine. The benefits of the mentorship, and I always love to sprinkle in some case studies in there. So we're just going to get regulations right out of the way because it's really boring. Transplant is highly, highly regulated. It is the most regulated area of medicine. And living donation is the most regulated area of transplant. So I have a lot of regs that I have to make sure I'm very, very familiar with and up to date on. They will come, they will audit our charts and make sure we have done every single little step. So it's really important that we know all of those different policies. They are public on the website. If you ever want to go to UNOS and look them all up, we'll put you to sleep at night. So ideally, when we're trying to do an effective donor evaluation, you want it to be pretty simple. You want it to be informative. You want it to be efficient. Everyone wants this one-day evaluation, come through, get to donation yesterday if possible. But at the same time, it's very overwhelming. There's so much information we are supposed to be educating people on and making sure they know every single option. We have to do a very thorough evaluation. I need to know that this is as safe as I can promise it is. And sometimes it's not easy to get all that done in just one day and making sure we know everything and that we've told you everything and that you remember everything and that you're making a truly informed decision. I was catching up with one of my friends last night. She's a former patient of mine, and I mentioned something about the Foley, and she goes, "Wait, did I have a Foley?" I'm like, yes, you did. You woke up with it and truly forgot it even years later. And we want a standard evaluation, right? But we all know one size does not fit all. So, sometimes people are talking on the internet and everything, oh, my center did this, mine made me do that, I had to do this, how come you did that? And it's really because of different people's evaluation, the things we found, their medical history. So it sometimes is customized to that individual, and that can be why there can be some differences. There are a lot of other differences between the transplant centers. So, we all have our standards that we have to go by with those regulations, but then we also have our own individual policies as well. So you'll find between different transplant centers, there are different age cutoffs, minimum, maximum age. Some centers have different BMI cutoffs. Some will require people to lose weight before they'll ever even talk to them. We are a center that requires donors to quit smoking before we can do an evaluation. I have tried to change that because I know they're going to start smoking again right afterwards, but there are different policies on substance use history, medical history, family history. Do we do genetic testing when we don't even know all the ramifications of that genetic testing? We all do this based on evidence-based research and also the transplant centers, providers' individual personal experience. So really, when it comes to medicine, it's supposed to be do no harm. And even though we all know that, it works out great in the end, it is the only thing we do in medicine that is done for the benefit of someone else. So we really have to be cautious and find that balance between being paternalistic and protecting someone's autonomy. So the intake and evaluation, it's going to be a little bit different center to center because we're all structured different. We have different resources, different histories, but it's usually some version of reviewing the intake information. Some do that with the donor. I do that with the donor. Some do it, behind the scenes, and then scheduling that evaluation. Again, we are a center that tries to do it all in one day, but some will do several different steps. But the main focus of it all should always be donor safety. And I kind of think of some of my other centers that I've collaborated with, that I think of as like donor-friendly centers. They put the donor at the forefront of this process. They want the donor to have a good experience. You can tell when there's other centers where it feels a little bit more like this is just a commodity, right? Like this is a resource for our recipients, not a unique individual patient population. So I can always tell kind of the difference when I'm collaborating on an exchange with the two different kinds of centers. But no matter what, it always has to be voluntary and confidential. So I know it's a little busy, but this is the way that we kind of try to get people through this flow. They come in through our online registration now, the coordinator reviews it, and then our medical assistant at our center is usually the first point of contact. As Terry mentioned, they are really fast at calling. So it's always, oh yeah, someone already called me, I already spoke to you guys. And no, it's separate, but we work together. We do our intake interview over the phone. I already start at that point explaining the process, educating them on what to expect, and set up for labs. Then we have the donor advocate, or the ILDA, they call the patient, because now CMS says they have to talk to them before I can do any testing. Hopefully our donor completes the labs in a timely fashion. And then if that's all normal, we do a one-day full team evaluation, including the CTA, presentation to the committee, and then if they're going as a direct donation, hopefully we can schedule surgery. Otherwise, if we're going into an exchange, then they come in and get to sit down with me for about 2 hours to go over all that paperwork and explain that process. And then hopefully eventually we get to pre-op, surgery, discharge, and we're usually trying to call and follow up right after discharge, and then they have to do our standard follow-up. What was that?
How many transplants do you do?
So last year we did 51 living donor transplants. I don't remember our number of cadaveric, but we usually do over 100 deceased donors, so somewhere in that range. Now that flow that I had up there, that process is constantly evolving because things changed. We have new evidence, we have new processes, so we should be constantly evaluating our flow and finding where are the bottlenecks, what is slowing you down from getting to surgery. For instance, a while ago we realized I couldn't get people in the door because I didn't have enough spots with a nephrologist. So we figured out a way to open up and set aside more spots with the nephrologist. So we're always kind of looking at what is slowing this process down. And also really kind of looking at how we're doing things, why we're doing it, asking like, does this make sense anymore? I also believe really strongly that there should be no different evaluation process, whether you're directed or non-directed. It's either safe or it's not, right? I don't care who you're donating to or why you're doing it. It's safe or it's not. So we're gonna look at a little case study. We had a 56-year-old female attempting to donate to her cousin. She had a very easy evaluation. She was quickly cleared, and we were just waiting on the recipient to finish his evaluation. Well, his status declined, and unfortunately, he was deemed no longer a candidate for transplant. And she says, well, I've already gone this far. It seems kind of a waste not to just give it to someone else. And our policy at that time matched pretty much everyone else's policy at that time, which means if you're a non-directed donor, you have to see the psychologist. So we're immediately now saying, oh, well, you must be crazy, so you've got to go talk to this person. Whereas just, 2 weeks before, she was perfectly fine. With those little regulations, they say every donor does need a psychosocial evaluation, but it's fairly standard that that's done by a social worker. And so we're either telling this donor that they're now crazy, or we're saying we don't have faith in our social workers' capability to assess that risk. So it was really nice to have that concrete example to bring to my team and say, you cleared her 2 weeks ago, and now we have to go through this extra step. And so we did away with that, which is great. But these are the things that we're sometimes trying to be mindful of, why that psychosocial evaluation is so important, because we know after donation can be a really tough time for a lot of us. There's known talks about post-donation blues, heightened anxiety. You have a surgery you don't need. It's very normal to jump a little bit higher every time you feel a twinge, a twitch, anything. Is this normal? Is this a complication? Was there an unexpected outcome? Maybe the recipient didn't do as well. That can be really tough. I hear a lot of people say, they took my kidney out and now they don't even want to talk to me anymore. It's like they don't care about me. Or they don't want to call me. These are all things I've heard from people. I don't want to bother you. I don't know what I do next. Will I ever feel normal, like myself again? And then when I tell them, yes, you're fine, oh, I'm just so happy just to know it's normal. Then I get a lot of them saying, you told me it would hurt, but I didn't believe you. Or else they say, you said it was going to be way worse, and it really wasn't that bad, which is always the goal. And then I thought I'd be better by now. There tends to be a type who donate that are a little highly motivated, type A kind of people. Maybe they do all these crazy things. And so they expect, like, days after surgery, going to be back to running marathons and things. And, some people do get up and start exercising pretty quickly, but this is a surgery. It takes a while to recover. It took me 8 weeks to fully recover. So, I'm not the poster child for donation, believe me. So this is what my day looks like. It's all over the place, pretty much. So if you're ever wondering, why aren't the coordinators calling back? It's because we're doing a lot of stuff. Usually I log in, take a deep breath, sip my coffee, and just look at what is already scheduled for the day. I have to review a whole bunch of stuff through NKR all the time, checking my emails, voicemails, seeing what new results come in. And then I'm prioritizing my day. What is the most important thing for me to start with? If I'm doing a donor evaluation, that means at a minimum I'm spending an hour with that person, one-on-one, doing a lot of education, and then kind of coordinating with my medical assistant to make sure everything is going smoothly. Am I doing a new donor screening? Well, then it's a minimum of about 30 minutes on the phone, starting with that education and screening. Am I doing that NKR consent? Again, about 2-hour appointment for education and consent. Am I doing a pre-op? Then I have all that time, 30 minutes going into things and moving the medical assistant, keeping everything on track. Do we have a surgery coming up? Well, then I have about 8 different checklists to do to make sure that we have done every single thing and that we're not missing anything. You really want us to be paying attention to that and being thorough that everything's been done. Am I doing an actual exchange that day? Well, then I have to go into the OR and be helping with the packaging of that and handing it off to the courier. So I'm usually gone for another 2 hours with that. And then on the other side, all these other things come in to disrupt everything else. So I get urgent phone calls coming through. I'm prepping the paperwork and information for upcoming appointments. New critical issues are popping up. I have to stay on top of every single donor that's coming through my workflow. And did we lose their labs? What's going on with this person? Are they following up? What's happening? Are they still interested? I haven't heard from them. I have time-sensitive labs coming in for pre-op. These things have to be done at very specific time frames. So I have to kind of be aware of all of that. Quest labs, they have horrible turnaround times, so I have to make sure everything's being done in a timely fashion. Is a donor experiencing a post-op issue? We want to address that quickly. Do we have a match offer? I have to jump a whole bunch of things off my table so I can jump to the head of the list and look at this match offer, prepping for meetings, planning calls. So it's kind of just all over the place, and things disrupt me all the time. So I often feel like I'm doing this, but I have to be the doc, right, in front of my patients. They don't care that I'm doing all that other stuff. I want them to feel comfortable and confident, and when I'm with that person, it has to be my main focus. So sometimes when they're not calling back, it's because we've got some issues like face-to-face right in front of us. So communicating between the teams is always a very old, difficult challenge. We have donor teams, we have recipient teams, now we have mentor teams who kind of see everything all together. And so it's hard to sometimes be that person that kind of tries to keep the overall picture of what is going on. Sometimes our recipients and our donors, their time frames not matching up quite right, so that voucher option through the kidney registry really helps kind of when the teams aren't kind of coming together at the same time, this can help make that happen. So I often get contacted by various organizations, different types of mentorship organizations. We partner with NKDO now, which has been a great time, but I also get some other people who have good intentions, but maybe are not as organized or trained or anything like that. So we've had some interesting experience, and that makes a lot of transplant centers a little bit gun-shy on talking to other mentorship organizations. We definitely are wary of anybody that is charging a recipient to find a donor or is almost ultra protective of donors. They're saying, my donor's doing this, my donor's doing that. They're not your donor. They are a donor. They are their donor. And sometimes too, the mentors might not want to tell me something, or the donors might not want to tell me something, so they might want to tell their mentor. But then maybe they might not be comfortable telling their mentor something, and they want to talk to me about it. And we have to protect that person's path, whatever way it is. So how do mentors help my team? That early contact, we try also to call back within 2 business days, but it doesn't always happen. So having somebody make that contact, especially somebody who's familiar with our center and our practices and knows how to reach us, is so helpful. They clearly define their role and explain who they are and how we're together but separate. Setting realistic expectations for donors. Most everybody wants to do it right now, and can we please just get this done with? And explaining that this process does have to take a little bit of time. It's also really helpful to not start bad-mouthing transplant centers left and right. I mean, no matter what, this person is still going through this process, and they need to feel safe and comfortable where they are. So when it starts turning into this bashing session, it definitely is not productive. Keeping personal experience separate. We all have a different donation experience, and there are some similarities, and it can be helpful for a donor to ask those questions and get that answered, but their experience is theirs, and the mentor's experience is their own experience. Each donor and recipient pair is different. Relationships are different. There can be some very complicated dynamics in there. And because of that, it is okay to help a donor come to the decision that they need to say no. Yes, we want to convert people who want to be converted, but we get some of them in there that, I had a patient who showed up to every appointment saying, I don't want to do this. I'm going to do it because I want to help my mom, but I'm not a nice person. I don't want to do this. So we wrestled for a while. Do we decline that person? But ultimately, they did end up going on to donate, and it worked out. But it was interesting. Supporting declined donors. If you're mentoring someone who does get declined for a reason, that can be really, really tough for somebody to process. People who want to join this club really want to join this club, and if you can't, for valid reasons, it can be really, really tough for somebody who is declined. And then keep learning, right? This field is constantly changing and evolving, so it's really nice to have so many people here who are interested in staying up to date on everything that's going on. So this is usually what I end up seeing from potential donors. You come forward, I'd like to donate my kidney, please. But underneath that surface, there are all these different factors kind of weighing into what they're experiencing. Sometimes family is pressuring them into donating, or sometimes they're trying to pressure them out of donating. They might be afraid of what's happening. Their job might be telling them, you can't take the time off, we need you here. Complicated family dynamics. They might have doubts, anxieties, thinking of all the what-ifs that might happen. Or it's very uncommon nowadays, but you could have somebody with ulterior motives, trying to get some money out of someone, even though we know that's illegal for now. So we're always trying to avoid donor regret, right? You see a news story come out, he donated a kidney and now he regrets it, and that's the one that goes viral. But we all see and share a whole bunch of other stories that maybe get a quarter of the likes and shares that I regret it. Because that is reinforcing everyone else's fear, or all the people who aren't interested in donation. They're seeing that and they're like, yeah, see, I'm right. You're going to regret this if you do this, and that's why, I shouldn't do it either, and neither should you. And so that type of story, we do, of course, need to explore that regret and try and find those donors who might have that. But they've done studies. Most donors absolutely do not regret donation. So it's really frustrating to me when these are the stories that go viral. There are a lot of other influences out there through pop culture and, sharing all these stories from the internet. Selena Gomez saying she has no friends in the industry, and then everybody's mad that she didn't recognize her kidney donor there. NPR as organ donation has consequences they're not prepared for. Or even this one. The woman says she has no regrets about donating a kidney to ex who cheated on her. And that's great that she has no regrets, but some people are going to use this story to say, don't give this to your boyfriend, he might cheat on you. We've also had that happen. So, and then there's all these, fantastical media influences. People have been fascinated with transplant since the time of Mary Shelley with Frankenstein, but it goes all over the place. It even gets the rom-com treatment and the Hallmark movie treatment. I actually really enjoyed Be Positive. I don't know if anybody watched it, but I thought that one was great. The Grey's Anatomy one that was mentioned, I banged my head against the wall because they had, I don't know if anyone's seen that episode, but they have the entire chain just standing there in a room all staring at each other, and yeah, it was very interesting. So like these are the kinds of things that people are, when they're doing their own research and looking for information out there, they find this stuff. I found a couple of things on Reddit, you know, am I the asshole for telling my boyfriend to stop talking about his kidney donation? That was a really fun thread to go down, can I tell you? Oh my God. Or the other one was from a celebrity was posting a family member's need for a donor, and that's when they're saying, oh, I bet they can probably arrange something to make it worth your while, and you know, just again, these threads on the internet. Oof. So I always tell people, please just don't go to Dr. Google, please, please, please. Any step of this process, don't do it. And this is a direct quote I once heard from a donor at an event locally, that the experience of donating a kidney should be like the first time you bought, or the time you bought your first Cartier watch. I've never bought a Cartier watch, but, you know, and yes, we want to roll out the red carpet for these individuals, of course, but we're also going into a hospital, right? We're not going into a 5-star hotel, and we want to try and make this as smooth and comfortable for people as possible. But again, setting those realistic expectations of what this is going to be like, especially because many of our donors are not familiar with the medical system. And so, you know, it's not going to be a hotel. So we do obviously get complaints plenty of times. We're not pizza, we can't please everyone. There is vegan pizza, so I know even vegans like pizza. Just a fun little smattering of some of our complaints. You know, I get punished because Quest is terrible. I can't do that. Somebody once said from the hospital room, I couldn't pay someone to come take care of my wife. I really enjoyed the complaint about my darling Annie back there in the back of the room, that she's the worst. She told me this was going to hurt way worse than childbirth does. Who talks like that? Who says it's going to hurt that bad? And fast forward till after donation. They don't tell you how bad this is going to hurt. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. So there's some really interesting complaints, but this is the person's experience. So, you know, some common complaints, I don't like my fill in the blank, whoever's making them upset that day, or no one's calling me back, I wasn't prepared for the pain. I mean, those are the most common things we hear from time to time. For the transplant programs, I always say set reasonable expectations, tailor your practice back on feedback. You know, you don't want to have knee-jerk reaction to every single complaint, or it will be a really interesting time, but making sure that that feedback that's consistent, you're changing based off of that. And keep your entire team on the same page. For the mentors, again, reinforcing those reasonable expectations of what to experience. Validate those frustrations, because they are real, but don't negatively speak about the transplant program. Always stressing that donor safety is the top priority, and that's why we're jumping through all these hoops. Making sure that donor has the correct contact information. It's okay for them to call their ILDA. It's okay for them to call the program manager or call me. And remember, everyone recovers differently, so everyone's experience is going to be a little different. So our benefits of partnering with NKDO has been fantastic. The donors are so much more informed now. They are coming to us already knowing about their options. It's cut down my teaching time so much because I don't have to start right from the beginning all over again of explaining the different pathways and options out there and benefits sometimes of paired exchange, even when you're compatible. And the public is becoming more aware of these options too because of this. You know, it spreads slowly, but it's spreading. So the donors now have more trust in the team too. So it's really been a mutually beneficial partnership. And of course, I always like to stress that, you know, the mentor's experience is completely invaluable to that potential donor. It is the mentor's journey, and it's not theirs. And so sometimes that path might look a little bit different, and that's okay. We all get to that finish line in our own way and in our own time. So ultimately, we're all working together towards that same goal. We want to protect donors, and at the same time, we're dispelling myths, we're increasing transplants, we're improving and protecting that public perception when they're spreading all those Reddit threads and things. We're streamlining the process across the board and aligning the transplant centers' best practices together to ultimately protect donors. So we're keeping it collaborative, and it's not anyone's job to talk someone into or out of anything. You know, we all can see certain benefits and certain pathways, and my job is to give that donor the information to make their own decision. And I really believe the true value of this mentorship program can't actually be measured. Many of you know I was fortunate enough to go down to Paradise and get to meet this wonderful group, and slowly kind of admitted quietly at first to a couple of people that I was in the process of my own evaluation at that time, but I had declined mentorship. But I did enter into like unofficial mentorship with a couple of individuals from that group, and I did find it extremely helpful to, you know, have people I knew I could reach out to outside of my team. Again, people who had been through it before. So it was really, really nice. And if you guys want to bring me back, I can hold up the one in the next, the one finger in the next time. So I also have the benefit of having a picture of my own kidney. So sorry if anyone's squeamish, but that's the benefit of having your own surgeon's cell phone number available. So thank you.